Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the final Cook with OC program for 2023. Before we begin today's webinar, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices located in Toronto are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. My name is Tracie Napoli, Director of Fund Development and MARCOM at Osteoporosis Canada, and I will be your host for today. We'd like to thank thinkbeef.ca for their partnership with this cooking demo. Now, this cooking demo will provide general information about cooking and food knowledge. It is not intended as individualized health or nutrition advice, but if you have questions about nutrition, please consult a physician or registered dietitian. Now, during the webinar, we'd love to hear from everyone who's online with us. So if you have a question or a comment, you can click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and enter it there. And we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar within the time available. Osteoporosis Canada recommendations for nutrition focus on 5 nutrients: calcium, vitamin D, protein, magnesium, and vitamin K, and they're all essential for bone health. So just to do a quick refresh, calcium, it's one of the key minerals that supports new bone formation and helps maintain strong bones. Vitamin D ensures our bodies can absorb enough calcium to keep bones strong and supports muscle function. Protein is necessary to build and repair bone tissue and help keep muscles strong. Magnesium helps our bodies use the vitamin D, which is important for calcium absorption, and vitamin K activates a protein that helps build bone and bind minerals such as calcium to the bone structure. Now, in the coming weeks, check out osteoporosis.ca and make sure to subscribe to the national e-newsletter so that you can be the first to get new information, tools, and resources. Osteoporosis Canada also recommends that whenever possible to get your bone building nutrients through food sources. So including protein in your diet at every meal and snacks benefits muscle and bone health. Some examples of protein are beef, eggs, fish, white beans, chickpeas, nuts, milk, yogurt, and cheese. Now, the featured ingredient in today's cooking demo is beef, which has many essential nutrients packed into each small serving. And it is a high-quality protein, providing nutrients that are difficult to get from other foods like iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. Now, beef is a concentrated source of nutrients, providing a variety of essential vitamins and minerals for a small amount of food. And we want to make sure that we eat a variety of foods, including fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and foods that contain calcium like yogurt, cheese, legumes like white beans or chickpeas, as I said, broccoli, bok choy, and almonds. Our cooking demo featured recipe today is Tex Mex Cornbread topped beef stew, and each serving has 300 milligrams of calcium and 40 grams of protein. Now, you can find this and other recipes on the Osteoporosis Canada website at osteoporosis.ca/recipes. I will also share the recipe link in the chat as we go through the cooking demo. And as always, it's my pleasure to introduce our cooking demo host, Emily Richards, who is a professional home economist, freelance food writer, chef, and is the author and co-author of 11 cookbooks. Emily also writes and develops recipes for print and online publications that include everyday cooking and healthy eating. And Emily can be found on TV, radio, and webcasts just like this one. So please welcome Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Tracie. Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. It's officially hump day, midweek, and I can't wait to cook. I pretty much love cooking all the time, but when I get to share delicious recipes, especially ones that I absolutely love, like this one, it gets to be a little bit more of an exciting afternoon. And I think Tracie's hungry, so that's always a good sign of getting started.
I don't think it's just me. I think it's all of us. Yes, we love to see all the delicious things you're going to cook. And also, before you get started, as always, Emily's got that beautiful purple apron on. And if you were on at the end of the webinar today, one of our lucky attendees will win an unbreakable apron. So stay tuned for that. But this sounds like a very comforting and delicious and yummy dish. So looking forward to getting this started.
Oh, perfect. And you're right on all accounts, Tracie. It definitely has all that comfort in it. And I think that's what draws me to certain recipes is that comfort level. So we want to be able to enjoy not only delicious food, but making us feel good too. So, and in this case, we're getting a lot of protein and calcium in the recipe too. So a big bang for our buck. And it has some great make aheads, which we always love talking about. And I'll kind of take you through that as we work through the recipe. So I have my recipe right in front of me. This is something that I always do. I just can't have my screen. I need a piece of paper. So I always have the paper in front of me. And then in the end, it does get splashes and things like that. But that's always a sign of a good recipe. So we are going to start off with our beef mixture. So because this is a beef pie, there's two components. There's like the stew mixture and then the topping, which is the cornbread. So we're going to start off with the stew part. And it has kind of, when we think of Tex Mex flavors, it's kind of like the flavors that you would use in a chili. So think of this almost as a chunky steak chili. And it's going to simmer for a while. So let me tell you, the aroma in your kitchen will be absolutely amazing. So I'm going to start off with our steak. So this is, we're using 1 pound, and I'm using a cross-rib simmering steak that I have here. And it is a cut that you typically see kind of in marinating or simmering section of your meat in the grocery department. So in the grocery store. So there's the grilling cuts that, you know, you'll pick up steaks and things like that, and you'll put them on the grill. This type of steak is a great budget steak. So this steak was only $9 and it's going to feed 4 people. So if you're kind of doing the math in your head, this has got great value. But the great part about it is that it builds flavor as it simmers away and grazes in the liquid. So it absorbs the flavor that we're going to give it. So first of all, we're going to cut it. So it's about 3/4 of an inch thick. So we want to cut it into bite-sized pieces. Okay. So I have some that I already cut up, but I'm going to cut the rest here. And because it's all the same width and thickness, I'm just going to cut it into strips. So when I say bite-sized pieces, it's all a matter of how big your bite is, right? So if you want larger bite-sized pieces, just remember this, that it will take a bit longer to cook. So we want this to cook at the same rate. So when we cut it into these bite-sized pieces, make sure they're all about the same size so that everything is cooking evenly, okay? So that when we go to test that beef, it'll be nice and tender. So these are about maybe an inch in size because they are gonna shrink a little bit as they braise in our liquid, okay? Now, if you are wondering if you could use stewing beef, you definitely can use stewing beef for something like this, but I would still cut those pieces a little bit smaller. Okay. The benefit of buying one cut and then cutting it yourself is you tend to save a little bit of money. But the other thing is that it's all coming from the same muscle so that as it cooks, it will cook evenly. Okay. So there are my bite-sized pieces of beef. And I'm going to just take my cutting board here and give my hands a wash. And then we're going to add our seasoning to it. So if you are a chili lover, you could actually use your favorite chili mix and chili spices as a starter. But we're kind of using the classic combination of chili powder, oregano, and cumin. Okay. So I'm going to actually just leave it right on the plate. I don't need to dirty something else. I'll just go ahead and use this. So I have a tablespoon of chili powder. So often when we think of chili powder, we think, oh, it's going to be a little spicy. Chili powder is actually not really that spicy. It's something else that we add to it, like a cayenne or a hot sauce, red pepper flakes that creates that heat. Chili powder on its own typically doesn't offer up that heat unless you're using a specific variety of chili. So for example, if I was using an ancho chili, which tends to have a little bit more heat, that would be a little bit spicier. Or chipotle chili, not only would it be spicier, but it would be smokier. So you have the option to kind of play around with this and create the flavor that you like or that your family might like, okay? And I'm going to add some dried oregano. And I love using dried oregano. It has great aromatics and it works really well with the chili. And then some ground cumin. Now, if you want a bigger bang for the flavor, purchase cumin seeds, toast them a little bit, and then grind them. A coffee grinder or spice grinder. Just make sure if you're using your coffee grinder, don't grind your coffee after, because I've had cumin scented coffee and it's not my favorite. You might enjoy it though, you never know. And that will give it a really nice robust cumin flavor. And that really, this trio of spices really brings through that kind of Tex-Mex feel. And then our last two ingredients is the salt and pepper, okay? So if you already are kind of sodium aware, when you're cooking, you can reduce the amount of sodium that you need. So you can reduce it to 1/4 teaspoon each, or if you want to hold back and then add it later, you totally can. But we are cooking with flavor right from the get-go. So we want that flavor built into the beef. So all I'm going to do is make sure that my beef pieces are nicely coated. So what I didn't mention before I got started is that I just patted that steak dry with some paper toweling, okay? Because sometimes there is that little bit of excess moisture on the steak, and it's just nice to, when you go to sear it, that it's nice and dry, okay? Now, because this spice mix gets right onto the beef and we've cut it into smaller pieces, we're actually hitting more surface area. So we'll have lots of flavor in this little kind of beef stew part, right? Just like that. Now, if you needed to walk away for a bit, let's say, I don't know, the phone rang and it was a really important phone call, you could actually let this sit at room temp for about 10 or 15 minutes and come back to it. The flavor will just continue to build in the beef. If you needed to leave this for longer, you could just cover it with plastic wrap, pop it in the refrigerator, and then come back to it and finish your recipe. And you can do that for a couple of hours or even overnight if you needed to, okay? All right, now, Tracie, I know we have a lot of questions that have already come in. I'm just wondering if there's any we should address from the top before we get going.
I think you talked about the spice one. We did have a couple on, what if you don't have the Tex-Mex spices at home, about the heat. So we did kind of chat about that. Do we want to talk? We should just be like, do you want to talk about the other ones now? Do you want to wait? I know there's lots of different things. People are like, well, seems like a bigger deal to make a pot pie, but sometimes you need just to switch things up. And, we've all had a grilled, which is delicious, protein, a piece of beef and some veg, but sometimes you just need something a little bit different. So having that cornbread topped biscuit just, I think, makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more special, that kind of fun element to it. I'm just checking my questions here. So if we wanted to do this, the cut of beef, I think, which we already talked about. So, I mean, you could get the stewing beef you talked about, you could get and cut your own beef up. Is there any cut of beef that maybe would be a little too lean that we wouldn't want to use?
Well, the bonus of using a lean cut, so let's say steaks were on sale and you really wanted to make this and you're getting a great deal on steaks, you actually don't have to cook it as long. So that is the benefit, because it is a slightly more tender cut. You could reduce the cooking time for it and still get a nice tender cut. But here, the benefit of that longer, slower cook is that it builds flavor. And that's really what kind of draws. If you think about comfort food, a lot of the comfort comes from the texture, the flavor that's built, because it's kind of cooked for not like forever, but a long enough time that just overall it builds a great flavor. Now, because this is that kind of Tex-Mex chili feel, there might be some people that are watching today and they just, that's not their thing. You can kind of take this as an instruction to use your own flavor. So let's say you love Cajun seasoning. You could use that in here. You could use an Italian seasoning and make it a little bit more Mediterranean if you wanted to. So you can really kind of take the flavors that you love and take this technique and create your own version of any kind of pot pie, really. And believe it or not, you don't have to do the topping. But I don't know, after you see it, you might want to. So I actually put a little bit of oil in my pan to heat up. And I'm using a nice large pan because it has lots of surface area. And You don't have to use one this large, but the reason I am using it is because I can get this 1 pound of the beef right in here. Okay, all of it. I don't have to do it in batches, and it will easily fit in here nicely so that it's not going to sit on top of each other. So we do want to have some nice spacing on that beef so that it gets that browning action happening. So the benefit is now we're starting to cook the flavor and sear it right onto the meat so that that flavor is starting to build. And what happens is that I'm just going to scooch this over so you guys can see it overhead a little bit better, like that. There we go. The great part about that is that it's building flavor in the bottom of the pan as well. And we're going to deglaze it by adding that beef broth. So it's just, the flavor has nowhere to go but inside the dish, which is fabulous. Okay. So what you want to do is just make sure that you stir your beef pieces around so that they get nice and brown. And you'll start to see that nice toasty mahogany color of the beef come through as it sears. Now, if you are in a rush, and let's be honest, there's some times that you just kind of want to speed things up, you need to get things going, you can just do a little bit of this browning and then start adding your other ingredients. So you can speed it up a little bit. What you can't do in this situation is speed it up for the braising part of it, so the simmering in the broth. This question might not have come up, Tracie, but I think it might be one in some people's minds of, can I do this in my Instant Pot? Can I do it in my slow cooker?
Great question. That's a great question. Yeah.
So this definitely can be done in either. Okay, so in an Instant Pot, this beef will cook in usually less than half the time. You will get a little bit more moisture, but that's okay. You're going to get the tenderness, which is really lovely. And same with the slow cooker, you're going to get a little bit more liquid, but you still get that nice tenderness. And so definitely you can use your air fryer. No, sorry, not the air fryer on this one, Instant Pot or slow cooker. There's so many wonderful appliances that people love using that sometimes I just forget all of them. All right, so I have a really nice golden brown coating on my beef. I can start adding my vegetables here. So I'm going to add a nice big onion that I've chopped up. And then I'm adding a green pepper. Again, same size. I'm chopping everything in similar size pieces because we're putting this into little ramekins. We want everything to kind of cook at the same rate, okay? So that when we spoon it out, we really get the benefit of, you know, taking a bite and everything is bite size. So I feel like we should use more green peppers. I feel like green peppers are kind of left in the grocery store and they just get left behind. So this is a great opportunity to use green peppers. I know not everyone's a green pepper lover, but in this situation, they really mellow out because they're going to be cooking the full hour and 15 minutes with the beef. So they're going to pick up that nice beefy flavor. They're also going to offer up a little bit of color. And don't worry, you can use other peppers. So if you want, you can use yellow, orange, or red. Okay. So we're not stuck on green, but I just wanted to give it a shout out to the green pepper because I always try to
Emily,
get
I'm
them
going
in
to jump in. I think that's a great point because, you know, green peppers often are less expensive than other peppers, but they're great to cook with. So that's fantastic. We do have a quick question, and it's going back to when you said, you know, if there was a steak that you wanted to cut up. So someone's asked, if you cut it off the bone, could you put the bone in while you're doing this to add flavor or not really? Is that something that you would do?
100%. I would definitely get that bone in there. Now, oftentimes we, you know, just don't think about the bones, but you're also getting a deal if some of those roasts and steaks are on the bone. So yes, put it in here and let it simmer away. The flavor will come out. Sometimes you'll get the benefit of, depending on which bone you're using, that little bit of marrow will leach in there as well. And that will provide flavor and some nutrition as well, which is wonderful. So you could definitely do that. And I know that if there's any dog owners out there, they love simmering those bones because they have somebody at home that will enjoy those bones later.
As a fellow dog owner, as Emily does. And you know what, we're starting to get a lot of questions about, you know, can you substitute this and substitute that? So we're going to address some as we go through the recipe. But as we always say, when we develop these recipes are developed so that we can focus on bone building nutrients, specifically like calcium and protein. And we have all those other new nutrients now that we're trying to address. So if you're going to make a change, you need to realize that once you take something out, you have to put it back in for that same nutrient value. But also, like, for example, peppers stand up in this. Not all vegetables would stand up in a long braising or baking piece. They may kind of fall apart. Now, things like peppers and onions, good for you, but not, not calcium or protein focused. So if you decide you want to put something else in there or you want to omit that, that's okay. We actually had someone who I think it was on one of the social platforms, already made this recipe last week and said they added a whole bunch of other vegetables to it, including everything that the recipe called for. They took a photo and it looked fantastic and they said it was delicious. So just to be mindful of any substitutions you make with that in mind. So we'll just keep going and checking this out. And I see the questions popping up, so I will let you know.
I'll just include a little info about the vegetables, like zucchini, for example. That would be great in here, but it will completely disintegrate in here as it cooks. So, and that's okay. So if you have some zucchini you need to get rid of, by all means, you can add it in here. You could add double up on the peppers if you wanted to. Overall, you have to remember, the more kind of filling you get, the less gravy you get in this pot pie too. So there's different vegetables you can add at different stages. And so right now, anything that would stay and cook for a long time. So as Tracie mentioned, the peppers, onions would work really well here. Celery, carrots, squash, sweet potato, those things that kind of will stay together would work really well. We are now gonna add our beef broth. Okay, so I have 1 cup of beef broth going in here. And all those brown bits that we created in the bottom of the pan are now going to be lifted off the bottom of the pan to create a really deep, dark gravy. So if you take a look in my pot here, you can see how dark and delicious it is. So it has a really great color. And we only need a cup because as the beef simmers away and cooks, it will also lose some of its liquid into that broth. So it's kind of doing a little bit of 2 things. It's letting some liquid out, but it's also in the liquid to absorb some of that flavor. So basically, you take this and you let it, I have to cover it. That's the first thing I have to do. Okay. And then this is going to just simmer gently for about an hour. Okay. So I'm going to actually just put this on my back burner because I know you guys are busy and I don't want you to have to stay here for an hour. So I kind of jumped ahead. I will leave this one on my back burner cooking away. I'm going to switch to a new pot, this one here, which is a little bit smaller, and I'll tell you why. This one has been cooking for about an hour. Okay? And what I did was, because I wanted to show you all the stages, one of the things about these webinars is that we're here for a short period of time, but I want to be able to show you what it looks like from beginning to end. So I kind of took apart the recipe and just to show you in stages what everything looks like. So this is half the amount of what I originally started with, okay? So if I open it and you look and go, where did it all go, Emily? I promise I didn't eat it yet. It's only because I wanted to show you the different stages. So here I have the beef that's been cooking for an hour. So it still has that really nice golden brown color. The sauce in there is delicious, but we're going to add a little bit of richness and some calcium here to give us a little bit more of a thicker gravy. Okay, so this is where our milk and flour come in. And with this flour, all of a sudden, I know this is going to happen because some questions have already come in, is I can't have gluten. Can I leave the flour out? So I have a few solutions for you. You can't just add the milk in here because milk has water in it. It's a higher proportion of water, so it tends to split. And so you're going to get almost like a curdled look. So if you want to, you can substitute the milk for cream. Because it has a higher fat content, it will kind of just create a nice thicker gravy. And then you can leave the flour out entirely. You could also use cornstarch with the milk, okay? You just will add it a little bit later. So at this point, if you take a look at your recipe, it says to uncover it, and we're gonna make, this is just a slurry of milk and flour that I'm gonna whisk together, okay? And you're gonna add this and then cook it for 15 minutes. Because it's flour, it needs that time to cook and thicken. If you end up using cornstarch, and you can use the same amount of cornstarch as flour, you're gonna let this cook for an extra 10 minutes before you add this slurry, okay? So hopefully, Tracie will let me know if any of that made sense, but hopefully it makes sense for those of you that are looking for some gluten-free options, okay? And we'll address more gluten-free options when we get to the cornbread portion, okay? So make sure that this is whisked up well so that you don't have any little lumps in your milk mixture. And then I'm going to stir this into my beef mixture, and I'm just going to let this cook for a little bit, and it will thicken and get a little bit lighter in color and continue to build flavor. And it's also going to get a little bit more tender because the beef is cooking a little bit longer, okay? So after that hour, I want you to just take a piece of the beef with your fork and see how tender it is, okay? So you can, eat it at that point. And if it still feels like a little bit chewy, that's what the next 15 minutes is going to help with. It's going to kind of help tenderize it a little bit more and give it a little bit more tenderness so that you can actually take that fork and break those little bite-sized pieces in half easily. So that is the fork tender that we're looking for, okay? So as this sits and cooks a little, we are going to make our cornbread, so the topping, okay? So any questions on this part, Tracie?
No, actually, no.
Okay.
We did have some people also share that you could use gluten-free flour instead of the cornstarch. Is that fair? Like they could use that with the milk? Would that still work or no?
It doesn't create the thickness as well as cornstarch would, but you definitely could use it. It just doesn't have the same body. That's all. But yeah, you can definitely use that.
And then really at this point, we're looking to now make individual and top with the cornbread topping. But at the end of the day, we're making beef stew. So, right, Emily? Like if you like this, just like this, you've got a delicious beef stew that you're going to be able to just eat out of the pot.
That's right. And here's where you're going to add some other veggies. So let's say you have a bag of frozen corn or mixed vegetables.
We love our frozen vegetables. They're on hand. You buy them on sale. Throw them in.
This is exactly this, or canned vegetables, for example.
Oh yes, that's right.
You can just open up a can, drain it, and you can add it at this point to heat it through. So that's those other veggies that you can add. So you've already added those veggies that were cooked, and now these ones are going to kind of finish it off. So if you want to add, more corn to the cornbread part, this is a great part to do it in, because then it adds a little bit of sweetness. And you're really just getting the nutrients of those vegetables in here as well, on top of all the protein and calcium that we're adding to it. So it is kind of a win-win situation. And if you have leftover roasted vegetables, because they're already cooked, you could stir them in here as well. So remember, anything you continue to add here, you lose a little bit more of that sauciness, but that's okay because you're bulking it up with some great nutrient-dense veggies.
And also you'd get a bit more water, right? Like if you're adding frozen vegetables, if you're adding extra things that will leach out, like say you put tomato and you put more peppers, you're going to have more liquid from those vegetables. So It's not so saucy. It's a little bit more, it's still delicious. At the end of the day, what do we always say? It's whatever you guys want. We're here to help, right? It's personal preference. We're just helping give you ideas that you can, one of the food guides, things is like cooking at home and eating with other people and coming up with things, but it doesn't have to be the same meal. I mean, are you like me? You have a Monday menu, a Tuesday menu, Wednesday menu. Do we all have that? Does everyone have that? Or is it just like Emily and myself? But sometimes you want to switch it up and go, I'm excited to cook this. I'm excited to serve it. I'm excited to eat it. So this is great. Let me ask you a question, because we're going to get the freezing question. We love to freeze our meals and portion them out. So if you're only cooking for 1 or 2, because we're making 4 portions, right? Emily, that's okay. Would you freeze part of this at this point, or would you fully make the topped cornbread top stew and then freeze?
So this is the beauty of this recipe, because essentially it's two components, right? We're dealing with the beef stew part, and then we have the cornbread part. So this, if you wanted to stop now and it's cooked, you're going to eat some tonight and you want to freeze the rest, you totally can. Whether it's in individual portions or you want to just freeze the rest of it as is. You can also leave it in the fridge for a couple days and then come back and just put the cornbread on top in a couple of days if you want to change it up. So this is kind of the first stage where, yes, you could totally freeze this right now if you wanted to. And let's say you needed a meal for two next week, just divide it in half, freeze half, and then just use the two portions for tonight or tomorrow and go ahead and enjoy it. So yes, you totally can. You can freeze it at this point. And then I'll tell you the other freezing point when we get there, because it does have versatility to be frozen in a couple different points. Okay. So we're going to make the cornbread topping, which again, I'm giving you some options here because it's totally up to you. So we love sharing these recipes as is so that you can see them how they are made and how they taste as is. But then I hope that you're jotting down notes as we're going through, because this really can become your own. And if you're creative in the kitchen, or if you feel comfortable in the kitchen, things will pop into your head. This often happens even during a webinar when I'm talking. I think, oh, wow, this would be great. Like right now I'm thinking, if I had some leftover sauteed mushrooms, I would totally add these to this because I love beef and mushrooms. It would be a great combination. And with these flavors, it would totally work. But what about beans, guys? You could totally add a can of beans, right? I would use the smaller 14-ounce cans and you could stir it in here. So now we're stretching this meal. You can actually feed 6 people by adding that can of beans, because you're not only adding more protein, but you also have that additional fiber in there too. So, and beans are a great budget-friendly meal extender. So as I'm talking, things pop into my head. So hopefully if you have any suggestions, you can always let us know too, and then we can share them with everybody. So I'm going to make the cornbread. And this is a small amount because we only need it for 4. So I'm going to use 2/3 cup of all-purpose flour. And here's where right away, gluten-free, if you can use gluten-free flour for this, okay? And then I'm going to add 1/2 cup of cornmeal. So this 1/2 cup of cornmeal is gluten-free. So you can use gluten-free flour and gluten-free cornmeal. Cornmeal is simply, it's dried corn that's created into a flour, but it's not corn flour. Cornmeal is a little bit coarser. So if I hold some in my hand here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it in my top camera, but it is a little bit kind of granular, okay? Corn flour has more of a light texture, like flour, so it's more powdery. So if I just put some of the cornmeal off to the side and then put some flour on my hand, hoping that you can kind of see the difference a little bit. If I get a little closer there, let's see, where am I? There we go. Okay, so you can kind of see the little grains in the cornmeal, whereas the flour is more powdery. So you can purchase corn flour, but that's not what you want to use. You want to use the cornmeal, so you get that little bit of texture in this cornbread. Now, if you're not a fan of cornmeal, or if you don't like that texture, you can use all flour for these biscuits, okay? But they do add a really nice golden color as well, which is lovely. Then we're going to add a little bit of cheddar cheese, okay? So this is an old cheddar that I'm adding. If you have some cheese that you need to get rid of, you can use it instead. If you want something a bit more gooey, like mozzarella or Havarti, what would be really great in here? A little spicy Havarti. That would be delicious. Jalapeno Havarti. If you don't want to chop up a jalapeno, which is what I did, that's also going in here. Now for this, it does provide a little bit of heat. For less heat, don't add the seeds. Okay, so just chop it up, take the seeds out of the jalapeno. If you're looking for some heat, leave the seeds in and just chop it all up and add it in there. If you don't want any pepper at all, you can leave the jalapeno out, okay? It's not going to make or break the cornbread. It does add a really nice little bit of color, but this could very easily be a little bit of finely chopped red pepper if you wanted, because it's only really a couple of tablespoons that's going in here. So, or if you had a little extra green pepper that didn't get in here, you could add it in here as well. So you have lots of options and lots of variety, okay? I'm gonna start stirring this together. And cornbread is a quick bread. So we need our leavener in here, which is a little bit of baking powder, okay? Just a teaspoon. And I'm gonna stir that all together. And you'll notice that I'm not adding any salt to this mixture because I have the cheese in there. I don't need to add that additional salt. I found the flavor was quite nice just with that little bit of cheddar, okay? So just stir that around so that the cheese is coating by the flour and the cornmeal, just like that. And I'm gonna set it aside and I'm gonna get the liquid component ready, which is my milk. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of oil, okay? So if you wanted to, this could very easily be butter, melted butter, just a couple tablespoons, but we do need a little bit of that fat in there to give us a nice mouthfeel for the cornbread itself. Okay, and I'm just gonna give that a little stir. So let's talk about these little pot pies then. Here I have a little baking sheet with some parchment paper on it, and I have a couple of ramekins. So these are fairly good size. They're just over a cup because it is about a cup per person that everyone will get. And you need a little bit of room for the cornbread. Now, if you don't want to do individuals, you could just use an 8-inch square baking dish or casserole dish, put all the beef stew in the bottom and all the cornbread on top, okay? So don't feel that you have to do this individually. Tracie and I just love these little individuals because they look so cute. And they're also great to freeze individually because then you can pull one out at a time, okay? So I'm going to take my beef mixture and I've already greased these little ramekins, okay? So they do have less chance of heavy duty cleanup later. Oops, I lost a little chunk there. I have to grab it and just divide it equally. So remember, this is half the amount that I'm using. That's why I only am filling 2, but the recipe fills 4, just because I wanted to show you the next step as well. All right, so there's my beef stew going in. That. I'm gonna grab this little piece here. Okay, and then the reason why I have it on the baking sheet is because, especially when you're doing individuals like this, it's easier to have them on a baking sheet so that then they're easier to go in and out of the oven, okay? So if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. Sometimes you might get a little bit of bubbling over from the sauciness of the beef filling. So it's always easier to clean up too. All right, so I have those ready to go. And then I'm going to do a little switch here. I'm going to add my milk and oil mixture to the cornbread, dry ingredients, and we're just going to stir it together. Now here's where I'm going to give you a couple more options. In the recipe, you are going to put this cornbread mixture right on top of each little pot pie. So make sure that your ingredients are well moistened, okay? So you'll be able to see that there's no dry spots. And then I like to just kind of try to make it even here. This may sound silly, but we have to divide it into 4. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it here and take a nice big heavy spoonful and put it right on top. Okay? And then just kind of spread it out like that. And then here's my second one. That. I'm gonna just spread it out. A little extra on that guy here. So this is how the recipe is written, right? So you're gonna have 4 of these little ramekins and you're gonna fill them up and top them. Now, because I've only done half, I'm gonna show you your other option. Let's say you just wanna have stew and biscuits. You totally can do that. So you're gonna have your stew simmering away, and in that last 15 minutes, while you're thickening up that sauce, you can make the cornbread and then just bake them off in the oven while your stew is finishing up. And you'll just put them on your baking sheet like so, and you're gonna make some drop cornbread biscuits. Oh, that's a mouthful, okay? And your oven needs to be at 400 degrees. And you're gonna pop them in for about 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to pop this into my oven. And then I'm going to pretend like 20 minutes passed. And this is why you only saw 2, is so that I can make 2 to show you what they look like when they're done. So what you're looking for is that beautiful golden brown topping on the cornbread. And you can see how it's got that gorgeous golden yellow color with the little flecks of jalapeno in there. And then these are those biscuits that if you just want to have biscuits on the side of your stew, they're ready to go. Or if you want to put them on after, you can. So let's hop back to freezing. You can let these cool completely, wrap them well, or put them in an airtight container and pop them in the freezer. Okay, so then you can pull out 1 pot pie at a time. I usually let them thaw in the refrigerator overnight and then pop them in the microwave, or you can pop them back in the oven to warm them through. Okay, but in these little individual cups, they're great because you can take them to work, take them to school, and they're just easy to eat that way. You can also, as I said, freeze the beef stew part on its own. And then if you still want to make those cornbread biscuits, you can freeze these too, and then pull them out when you're ready so that you have your full meal as if you had made it all fresh at the same time.
Loving this, Emily. I'm loving this. And you know why? Okay, so we just love giving you all different kinds of options. So because we have a lot of, everyone's got different situations. They're cooking for lots of people. They're cooking for just one person. Everyone's got different tastes. The fact that we can make little biscuits, you can make your stew. You could literally have a bowl of stew and a biscuit, or you could cook the biscuit on top of the individual ones. You could make a family style where you make it all. And then, because then, the biscuit gets a little bit, it starts absorbing that yummy gravy that you've got. We've given you lots of suggestions. So couple of questions. We did have, so just to double, somebody just popped it right here. Can easily double the recipe. So let's say you wanted to make 8 or a lot more stew. It's an easy double because, sometimes you need to check if that measurement is.
So this one is an easy double because there's not a crazy amount of ingredients, right? Where it's literally the beef and veggies and then the cornbread mix. Where you'll find doubling in the cornbread, you might need to add an extra tablespoon of milk or oil just to kind of coat all the dry ingredients. But I would stick with doubling all the ingredients first and then see if it mixes well. So this is not something that you're not adding a lot of spice level to it. So if there was hot pepper flakes in here or hot sauce, doubling it would maybe intensify it a little bit more. So we're just kind of nice and mild here. And you can also, as I said, you can remove some of that heat. So if jalapenos are not your thing, you can take them out. Or if you want more heat, you can always adjust to that too. And there's always hot sauce, right? You can have it at the table.
There's always hot sauce. You could add fresh herbs to the biscuits. You could add some chives, right? Like,
yes.
Again, it's whatever you like. Now, going back to the cornmeal. So if you're not used to cooking with cornmeal, it is gluten-free. It's also shelf stable. So if you pick it up, I always have some in my house and it's great. You can just leave it in there. Somebody asked if they're allergic to corn and they wanted to get that texture. Is there another thing they could substitute in? I can't think of anything off the top of my head that has that same granular kind of texture to it.
You can kind of create a granular texture. So you can use oats, for example, and just pulse them up in your food processor so that it's not exactly the same, but it will give you a little bit of texture, which is really nice. You could also use different flours, like barley flour, for example, great Canadian flour, and you could use it in place of the all-purpose flour and the cornmeal, and that gives it a nuttiness. So it's not necessarily a texture, but you're getting a nice flavor to it. So we do have some great ingredient options, and what's great is that biscuits, for example, are very friendly for substitutions, and we're not adding too many ingredients, again, so that the richness is coming from a little bit of cheese and that little bit of fat from the oil, but it's really going to suck up the juice from our beef filling and it comes together really nicely. So hopefully those are some options. The other one would be to use something like flax, that you could also add some into, again, a ground flax where the nuttiness comes and there is a little bit of texture. Some ground almonds, if there's no nut allergies, that would also be a great option too.
Absolutely. Now, we did have somebody ask as well, could they make this dairy free? So a couple of things on that. The calcium that you're getting is coming from the milk in the stew, the milk in the biscuit, and the cheddar in the biscuit. So once you remove all of that and protein, you're removing that amount of protein and calcium from the dish. Now, if you, I'm just trying to think, could you use, to get that calcium back, could you use, Emily, a fortified beverage for that part of it?
For the liquid dairy,
for the liquid component,
for the fluid dairy, definitely
yeah.
You could use, as long as it does have that fortification that we want for calcium. You could substitute that for sure. The fortification in the dairy-free cheeses is not the same as far as I remember our conversation.
Yeah, there's nothing right now at this point that I think.
So that's where it's going to not be equal, but you can definitely have it there as the substitute, just knowing that you're not getting the same amount of calcium.
And again, I should keep just saying, we always say, because, you know, a lot of you will tell us when we miss something, and I will tell you, because we send out a survey after every webinar we do, because we do want your feedback. And we had people mention our last cooking demo that Emily did not taste the recipe. So Emily, while she goes and gets a utensil, I'm just going to share that, you know, we always say one meal isn't going to make or break your diet, whatever you're trying to get. Now, if you do this every day, yes, that is going to be an issue. But if this is, there she goes, are we all, that looks delicious.
Now I can't talk.
No, you can't. That's okay. I'll talk. It's all good. You keep eating that, because literally people mentioned Emily did not taste the recipe when we did the falafel one. So, but that's the thing, right? It's like, it's not like, oh my God, I didn't get everything that I needed in this one. You all have to make the choice. We give you a lot of suggestions. Sometimes you can't really substitute certain things. It just doesn't work. And the other times, if you're okay to eat it and you think it's delicious, go ahead. Whatever flavors, whatever other ingredients you want to add, at the end of the day, you're making it. But we really just want to encourage, like, give you different ideas to get those, you know, food sources from actual food if you can. And also to enjoy, right? Little moments of yumminess and pleasure while you're getting what you're supposed to get.
This is why I don't want to eat, because I like it so much, so I'll just keep eating.
I know, I just love that biscuit though idea of just baking them off to the side, and then like you've just got them to kind of to be good with it with some other stuff too, actually.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, we've got people saying thank you. They're all excited, and you know, like, especially, you know, during, you know, the season that's coming up and people are starting to get together, you don't need really big fancy things. Like, this is perfect. It's lovely. You put your time into it. It serves a lot of people, really good, budget friendly, etc. Delicious beef stew with some biscuits. And how happy would people be to eat that, or to pull it up yourself after a long day?
And that's right. And it would be great to serve to your family, your friends.
Yeah,
but you know
absolutely.
what? If you have a lot of December shopping to do, you need a meal like this.
And not going through the drive-through because you're too tired. And you're like, you know what? I have this delicious beef stew topped, cornbread. What are we eating? Cornbread topped Tex Mex beef stew. And we don't make the choice to go through it, which is fine. You want to do that, enjoy. We're not here to tell you what to eat. So, let me just see here. And the other thing is, if you do try other substitutions, let us know. Like, I love that somebody shared with us that they had already gone ahead and made this, and they added a bunch more veggies and served it with a salad. But exactly, somebody just said, you know, when you're on your own, sometimes we make very simple meals, and this is something that is a little more special that you can enjoy, because you should enjoy delicious things and festive things. So Emily, so this is our last cooking demo of 2023. We've had such a fabulous fabulous here. And we want to thank all of you who join us. We are so excited when we get comments. We love seeing you provide info on our surveys and keeping us up going, hey, you guys need to do this, or we're looking for some different kinds of recipes, etc. Thank you for joining us. Emily, you keep enjoying that. I'm going to just share, let me just grab my screen here. So these are, see, this is the Tex Mex recipe right here. We've got all kinds of, there's even more recipes on the Osteoporosis Canada website. So, if you're looking to do something over, the holidays and you're feeling like getting in the kitchen, get online. Let us know which recipes you really liked. So osteoporosis.ca/recipes. We have 2 more webinars this week, and then we're done for 2023. Tomorrow, we have a webinar, if you haven't registered, the importance of protein. And we have the new clinical practice guideline that came out. We have Dr. Rowena Rideout, who will be presenting what does that mean and what you need to know on Friday. You can still register. They're all free. We hope to see you there. It's on the homepage of our website. And of course, if you miss it, we did record today's cooking demo, and some of you have been asking about some of the webinars we've done over the last few weeks, like the origins of musculoskeletal pain that Dr. Andy Kinon Wong did. That was an excellent webinar last week. It's on the replay page, so you can go and check it out again. Great things to do on the holidays. Read our blog, the podcast, and also you can calculate your calcium. Thank you to our partners, because our partners let us do all this great work, and we're very grateful to thinkbeef.ca and of course Emily Richards, where we work together to create all these delicious recipes, but also help you get your bone building nutrients. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to our newsletter so that we can send you all the info right as it comes out directly to your inbox. Thank you to Roy, who's behind the scenes. Thank you to Emily. Thank you to everyone. Wishing you all well. And we have, stay tuned, we'll be sending out, we have a cook along coming up in January. We'll see you then. All the best for the holidays and Happy New Year, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.